If you're trying to conceive, you have almost certainly heard this. Just relax and it will happen. You heard it and wanted very reasonably to throw something. Here's what I want to offer you instead. Not an instruction to relax, but the actual science of why your stress state affects your body during this time. And most importantly, a specific framework for working with it that doesn't add another item to your already impossible list of things you should be doing right. Because the YUSR method was built for exactly this, for the experience of being in a body that feels like it's working against you, carrying something enormous in silence, and trying to regulate a nervous system that has been in chronic alert for months. Today, I want to show you how it applies specifically, practically, without making it your fault. Trying to conceive is one of the most neurologically demanding experiences I encounter in my work. And it is one of the least resourced because it happens in silence, because it carries shame, and because the dominant cultural message still is that if you just relaxed and stayed positive, your body will cooperate. This message is both partially true and deeply harmful. Partially true because your nervous system state genuinely does affect reproductive health. Deeply harmful because it turns the body's stress response into a moral failure. And shame in itself is one of the most activating states a nervous system can be in. What I want to offer you today is the science without the shame, the mechanism without the blame, and a framework that gives you real tools, not more pressure. Trying to conceive is not a single stressful event. It's a sustained one with monthly cycles that has its own neurological signature. The follicular phase, the first half of the cycle, often creates hope, rising estrogen, a sense of possibility. The nervous system is relatively available here. Ovulation, peak estrogen, LH surge bring a quality of urgency and action. There is often heightened energy, sometimes even anxiety. And then the luteal phase, 2 week wait. For most women trying to conceive, the 2 week wait is one of the most neurologically costly periods imaginable. Every physical sensation is scrutinized. Every twinge is assessed. The nervous system is in a constant state of low level hypervigilance, scanning the body for evidence, trying not to hope too much, simultaneously unable to stop hoping. This is the sympathetic activation state, and it is exhausting in a way that compounds with every cycle. Because when the outcome is a period or a negative test, the nervous system doesn't just experience disappointment, it experiences a threat response. The thing it was hoping for didn't happen. The loss is real and it activates. Over multiple cycles, this can create a pattern where the nervous system learns to pre brace, where it begins to protect itself from the hope, because hope means exposure to loss, where the body becomes a source of anxiety rather than a place of safety. And a body that has learned to brace against itself is not in its optimal state, neurologically, hormonally, or physically. The most common TTC response I see in the nervous system is a particular kind of resistance, a bracing against the body itself, a monitoring, a scrutinizing, a constant low level war between what you want your body to do and what it's actually doing. And that war is itself a stressor. Every act of resistance towards your own body generates a threat signal. The nervous system responds to the tension of bracing by activating further. Yield in the TTC context means turning towards your body rather than against it, not performing acceptance of an outcome that you haven't received yet, not pretending that you are not scared, just for the duration of a practice, for the length of a breath. Stop the war, stop the monitoring. Allow your body to be what it is right now without immediately assessing whether it's doing the right thing. This is one of the hardest yields I teach because the body during TTC can genuinely feel like it's failing you, and turning towards something that feels like a failure requires a particular kind of courage. But a body that is no longer being fought, that is no longer receiving the message that it is wrong, that it is broken, that it is not doing enough, begins to ease. The secondary applications of the bracing stops, and what remains is just the body doing its best in a situation that is genuinely uncertain. The TTC nervous system cycles to specific states that are worth naming. Each needs something different. The hypervigilant state, the 2 week wait version, scanning and monitoring, interpreting every sensation, thoughts moving fast, difficulty sleeping, a kind of electric alertness that never quite switches off. This is sympathetic activation. It needs discharge and gentle movement to complete the energy that's already running. The grief state, after a negative test, after a loss, after another month, hollow, heavy, flat. The despair phase of a nervous system that has been hoping and losing for a long time. This is a dorsal vagal state. It needs warmth, compression, and the particular regulation that comes from being witnessed, from not carrying this alone. The follicular and ovulatory phase, where the hope is present, but so is the awareness of what hope costs. This is a mixed state, sympathetic activation with ventral vagal capacity. It responds well to breath work and body based practice that builds regulation without suppressing hope. And the isolation state, the exhaustion of carrying all of this in silence, the particular weight of performing okayness at every baby shower, every pregnancy announcement, every well meaning question of when you're going to start a family. This state needs co regulation more than anything else. It needs to be witnessed by someone who understands. Seek in the TTC context is complicated by one thing: the habit of treating the body instrumentally, of reaching for practices not because the body needs them, but because they might help conception, of doing yoga not to regulate, but to perform regulation, in the hope that the performance will be enough. Seek asks you to step out of that instrumentality for long enough to ask an honest question: what does this specific body in this specific state right now actually need, regardless of whether it affects the outcome? If you're in the hypervigilant 2 week wait state, your nervous system needs movement and discharge, a practice that gives the activation somewhere to go, a walk, a yoga sequence, a breathwork practice that lets the body complete the cycle it's been running. If you are in the grief state after a loss or a negative, your nervous system needs warmth and proximity, something that holds the body rather than activates it, a restorative practice, the presence of another person who knows what you're carrying. If you're in the isolating state, seek means reaching towards community, one person who knows, one space where you don't have to perform okayness, one practitioner that holds this experience seriously. The last one, the reaching toward, is the hardest seek for women in TTC because isolation has often become protective. Because being seen in their grief means being vulnerable to it. But a nervous system held in connection heals more completely than the one held in silence. Regulation in the TTC context is not about optimizing for conception. I want to be very clear about this. It is about building a nervous system that is as supported as possible while you go through something genuinely hard. The regulation practices I teach: breath work, gentle yoga movements, body scan, self hold, do affect cortisol and heart rate variably and the hormonal environment of the cycle. That is real science, but it is not a guarantee. And framing regulation as a fertility strategy is a framing that ultimately adds pressure, which is the opposite of what the nervous system actually needs. Regulate in this context means I am going to support my nervous system through this journey, through the hoping, the waiting, the grief, and trying again because I deserve the support regardless of what this month brings. That reframe from regulation as a fertility strategy to regulation as self care during difficulty is itself regulating because it removes the outcome from the equation and puts you back in the center. You deserve a regulated nervous system, not because it might help you conceive, because you are going through something hard and your body deserves to be supported through it. Here is the user sequence for the 2 week wait. The moment when the nervous system is most activated and the urge to monitor is strongest. Yield. Place one hand on the belly. not to check for signs, just to feel the warmth of your own hand. Feel the breath rise and fall beneath your palm. This body is doing its best right now. Understand, what state are you in? Hypervigilant and scanning, shut down and grieving, something in the middle. Just one word, no judgment. Seek. What does this state need right now? Not what might help conception. What does this body, as it is today, actually need? Regulate. One thing. One extended exhale. 1 minute of self hold. One message to the person who knows what you're carrying. One small act of being kind to this body that is doing its best. On Saturday, I'll guide a full somatic practice specifically for this, for the nervous system in the TTC journey, built around the YUSR method, with breath work that directly affects the hormonal environment and movement that meets the body where it actually is. What you are carrying is real, it is heavy, and you are carrying most of it alone. You deserve support that meets you at the level of your body, not just reassurance, not just positive thinking, but actual nervous system support for something that is challenging. Leave me a comment if this resonated. Tell me where you are in this journey. Send this to someone who needs to know she is not alone with her feelings. I'll see you Saturday.